If you could please switch. Hi everyone and welcome to Active Travel Cafe. This evening we are joined by Richard Owen, CEO of Agilisys, who is going to talk to us about road safety and what that can mean for active travel. But before we get to our guest speaker, we will start with our usual news update. So, who's got some news for us today? Mark, over to you. What's your news?
So I didn't want to steal anyone's thunder, but I was representing a group in Redhill in a public inquiry a couple of weeks ago. And one of the issues was that Active Travel England were originally an objector, then dropped the objection. So it was just essentially trying to find out what other people's views of them, of ATE in planning issues have been. But specifically, if there's anyone, if Ruth or anyone is here from Horsham, because in Horsham there's a public inquiry where the inspector essentially said that ATE were a somewhat partisan group and didn't consider them a statutory objector in the full legal framework, and therefore they're going for a judicial review. Horsham Council are going for a judicial review supported by Active Travel England on the grounds that the inspector didn't take their role seriously. So they're mixed views on ATE's performance and planning issues. But it'd be interesting to hear what other people have been thinking, because obviously they have a lot to cover, a lot of planning applications to cover. They can't take everyone at the level of detail which we might hope they would do. But some feedback would be interesting.
If I can change. So there's their performance in terms of how many things they're responding to, how well they're responding to, but there also seems an issue of, are their responses seen as statutory responses or not? And therefore,
I think this one inspector was probably an outlier, which is why they're objecting to it, because they want to put their marker down that this is that they are statutory and they can't let this one go, go ahead. But it'd be interesting to get feedback from other places.
Okay, I'm thinking maybe someone can mention in the chat if they have a response to that, and we can then bring it in. But let's let that one stew for a little bit and see if we've got other news. But thanks, Mark. That's an interesting one. Okay, H, what's your news?
Well, I don't know if we got me there.
Yep, we've got you. It's working.
It's good. I don't know if we covered that last week, but Edinburgh announced a contract with, excuse my, right on the part of a fire engine. They got the contract with Voix to do their bikes, and it seems that Voix are going to also do the bikes in Glasgow. It appears also that Velogic, who are doing the bikes in Leeds, which are Beryl, but they're already doing the bikes in Glasgow, which are Next Bike, are beginning to make quite a name for themselves as the management and facilitating groups for each area for different contractors supplying the bikes. So I'm wondering, what pictures people are getting from that one. And in Inverness, we've still got the Bevegan bikes, which Highland Council took over and have contracted to a Portuguese provider for the software services. So it's interesting to see how it's going.
Great, thanks, H. And we have Voibike here in Cambridge, so interesting to see that they're expanding to other cities. One to keep an eye on.
Who are they contracting with in Cambridge?
Sorry?
Who are they contracting with in Cambridge?
I would say the county council or the CPCA, the combined authority, probably. Actually,
sorry, if I could interrupt, they're not contracting with anybody. That's the distinction. Sorry, this is a whole minefield, and it merits a whole discussion in its own right.
Right. Yes.
Voix in Cambridge are not contracting with anyone. They're contracting regarding scooters. The bikes are merely a favourable add-on brought in by the goodwill, trying to do the goodwill. In other places, like in Edinburgh, in Edinburgh, it's a memorandum of understanding. In Glasgow, it's a contract. The whole thing is a complete laissez-faire nightmare, and let's not discuss it now. Let's discuss it properly.
Yeah, sounds like we need a session to unravel that. We might need to go and find ourselves an update and another speaker to bring in on that. Thanks, H. Catherine, your news.
Yeah, so we had the Cycling Scotland conference in Dundee last week. So 200 active travel people all in Dundee, all very exciting. And the theme was all about investing in active travel gets results. So really nice to have the leader of the council stand up and do a keynote on why he believes in active travel. Really, really helpful for us in Dundee to also have lots of the road department there listening to some really inspiring speakers. We had Brian Deegan, we had Glenn Lyons, we had Kate Cairns talking about from Road Peace. So lots of really good speakers, lots of really good engagement and good timing as well, because we're sort of in a position where we've got quite a few different consultations opening at the minute for kind of big, exciting infrastructure projects. So we're at the point where we're getting a lot of pushback from the local paper, but I think having this sort of thing is going to help the council hold their nerve, hopefully. So good stuff.
Brilliant. Great, good news story. Catherine, how many years has the Scotland conference been happening?
I'm not sure. First one I went to was last year in Glasgow. The last time it was in Dundee was 2018. So I think Cycling Scotland as an organisation, I don't know, Age might know how long Cycling Scotland as a body has existed, but they certainly are responsible for delivering things like bikeability, lots of different things like that in Scotland. So.
Brilliant. Oh, that's great to know. Thanks, Catherine. Adam, have you got some news?
Yeah, this is more of a group kind of request. In WECA, West of England Combined Authority, the way we were expecting Active Travel England to use their design assurance process to allow various schemes to be dealt with or analysed. They've actually going through one sort of design review panel, and they're attending that as a attendee of that panel, and basically putting in comments through that. I was wondering if this is the approach that people are seeing with Active Travel England, which is they're basically trying to work within design review panels within combined authorities or even within councils, rather than directly being sort of reached out to on a scheme by scheme basis. And unfortunately, also within WECA, it is a voluntary thing to put a scheme through the design review panel. It is not a requirement. This feeds into the next thing, which is the TCR, the Transport City Regions funding that's come through. Money has been released early to combined authorities to allow them to start developing outline business case and full business cases. So if you're thinking wait till 2027, let's get the city region sustainable transport stuff out the way. Yeah, you've already got teams of people within officers starting to develop out schemes and starting. So you should be aware of that and starting to engage much closer with your councils and particularly with those officers, because you'll miss the boat. You'll go, right, now's the time, and it's like, oh, well, we made that decision 18 months ago. Where were you? Yeah, so that's happening now, and I know that was about £15 billion worth of investment, a lot of it going towards public transport, trams and trains, etc. But there will be a significant amount going towards active travel, but dominated probably by public transport, mass public transport. Sorry, that was a bit much. That was a lot there to put cover.
Thanks, Adam. Right, have we got any other news this week? Because I've technically still got a little bit of time in the agenda if anyone's got some. No. All right. This is great. I'm definitely going to get to my netball game on time tonight. All right. So time to hand over to Richard Owen. Richard is the CEO of Agilisys, and he's here to give us his thoughts on priorities for the government's upcoming road safety strategy. Richard, over to you if you would like to share your slides.
Thanks very much. Hi, everybody. My name's Richard Owen. Yeah, we've heard this from Agilisys. I'm not going to do 5 slides on who we are as a business. That's quite tedious and corporate, isn't it? What I will say, though, is that I've been working in road safety for about 22 years now, nearly 23. Started off in a safety camera partnership. Did a lot of data and analysis. My background is kind of like maps and data. I'm a geographer by training. I'm not an engineer, anything like that. Agilisys has been going for around 8 years now. There's about 20 of us in Banbury. We do a whole bunch of stuff mainly related to road safety, but obviously that leaks into other areas, including active travel as well. About 75% of our work is in the UK. We do lots of work for individual local authorities. We are working on the new Wales 20-mile-per-hour evaluation, which is going to take us about 5 years to complete. We do lots of work overseas as well. I was lucky enough to be in Manila last week at the Asia Pacific Road Safety Observatory Conference, which is absolutely fascinating, given the kind of difficulties that people in Southeast Asia have compared to what we have. If we think our infrastructure is bad for active travel, theirs is more or less non-existent. But it is really good, I think, for me to have that level of experience in different areas. So what am I going to talk today about? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the forthcoming road safety strategy that we've been promised for, it seems like, forever. The last one wasn't much to write home about anyway. We haven't really had a decent one for around 20 years, in my opinion. Anyway, we're going to do a little bit of crystal ball gazing, and I'm going to talk a bit about some of the systems that we use in the world of road safety, and how that may link in with active travel. I'm happy to take any questions that you like. You can make them as difficult as you like as well, although I may regret that later on. Anyway, this is a model, and it's our version of another model that lots of people have come up with, some Australians, some Swedes, etc. And it's called the Safe System model, and it's based on a number of principles. These are the principles in road safety. And the idea is that if you sign up to Safe System, as allegedly the government, National Highways, lots of local authorities have signed up to, you need to believe in these things, and you need to follow these things. And I think belief and understanding, making this part of your culture within the organization is really critical. Number one there is that people make mistakes. We can't keep forever blaming people for making mistakes. Now, drinking 10 pints and then driving is not a mistake, but taking your eye off the road for a moment is a mistake. So the Safe System fundamentally says that we're going to stop trying to stop people making mistakes. There's a whole bunch of other requirements in there. Humans are vulnerable to injury. That seems pretty straightforward, but that informs a lot of the work that we do, that death and serious injury are unacceptable. Not hard to sign up to, you would have thought. Responsibility is shared. We don't just blame the road users. We think about, the whole system. The approach is proactive. We don't wait until we've got, people killed and seriously injured on the road network before we do something. The old black spot analysis approach is dead. We need to make sure that we're thinking about what risk and danger looks like on the road network, and then treat that rather than waiting for the data to come in. And then, of course, the actions are systemic. And what do we mean by that system? Well, it breaks down into these 5 different chunks. You've got the road infrastructure stuff at the top. You've got safe road user behavior on next along the list there. We've got to make sure that vehicles are traveling at safe speeds and that those vehicles are safe. This is mainly looking at technology and safety systems to help keep the occupants safe, but also help keep the people outside the vehicle safe. And then, of course, post-crash response, which includes evaluating the evidence that we have as well. Right, this is a whistle-stop tour. When I do training courses, this sometimes takes up to half an hour to explain all of this. Then how do we do it? So this is the final part of the model. So you can see all of the different elements or actors within the safe system. This is how we make sure that we deliver it. So you can see all of the things that we'd expect to do. Anybody that works within a road authority or a police force would be expected to have some kind of role in a lot of this. Leadership and coordination. I mean, you kind of hope that would happen at a national level, and it does in some places, in Scotland, for example. Make sure that the appropriate legislation and regulation is in place. That's the framework that allows everything to hang off. Standards and training. I mean, I guess you could put the highway code in there as well. That tends to be the knee-jerk reaction from DFT, or we'll just put something else about safety in the highway code and that'll fix everything, won't it? Innovation investment, design and engineering of everything that's used on the network. Education and communications. part of the system, not necessarily a thing that you just do on its own. Not a lot of point in educating people about what a seatbelt is. You kind of hope that people would know that. So if people aren't wearing their seatbelts, telling them, hey, have you thought about wearing your seatbelt? Probably not going to do it on its own. Compliance and enforcement. I'm going to be really interested when we get to some of the questions at the end of this about how important you think that is. And then finishing it all off, you've got to do your research, you've got to evaluate, you've got to understand what works. So road safety strategy. Many of you might have seen this a year ago. A lot of the great and the good in road safety signed up to this PACTS manifesto. We had a great number of meetings. We wanted to come up with something snappy. And we knew that there was an election around the corner. So, we wanted to put together our own manifesto, as Agilisys are a part of PACTS. So the first one, develop a national road safety strategy. That's what we're talking about today. Let's have that, please. Second up, establish a road safety investigation branch. So an independent body that looks at any fatal and maybe serious collisions, and then tries to work out what went wrong. Why was that person killed or seriously injured? But without thinking about blame, without thinking about prosecution, just thinking about all the lessons that can be learned for everybody that operates within this safe system. Third up was graduated driver licensing. For young drivers, there's been a lot of this in the news lately. The government has completely ruled it out and is not interested in the slightest. And then adopting advanced vehicle safety regulations. Within Europe, they've adopted it. So, there's about 11 or 12 different vehicle technologies that by law have to be fitted and turned on when the vehicle started for all cars sold in Europe. We don't have that here because this government is allergic to doing the same things as people in Europe quite frequently, which is a real shame. And we think that, things like intelligent speed assistance, automatic emergency braking would be really sensible and great things for it to be mandatory, fitted to vehicles. But so that's what we said. What do we think is going to be in it? Now, I'd love to have a look in the OneDrives of all the civil servants in Department for Transport and figure out what's going on. We know that something has been written, and these are the things that we're pretty sure that's going to be in it, because the DFT briefed a load of journalists on it. You may have seen this in the newspapers over in August. Compulsory eyesight tests for over 70s happens just about everywhere else in the world. Doesn't seem like it's going to be too controversial. There's free eye tests for people over the age of 65, I think, anyway, so shouldn't be an extra cost. Lower drink drive limit. I was really quite happy and surprised to see this one come in. Many of you may realise that we're way above the limit of just about everybody else. There's us and Malta, I think, and we're the outliers in the whole of Europe in terms of the current level that we have at the moment. And then some other penalties, points for passengers not wearing a seatbelt. That one will be fun to enforce. More prosecutions for drug driving. I saw a great stat around Christmas last year from Merseyside Police. They did more people for drug driving than drink driving, which really goes to show that, this is something that's hidden there. And if you spend the money on the testing, of course, the roads policing officers that will deliver those tests, then, you can really start to hit home on this particular issue. And then, potential medical checks, not too much said on that one, but that's all we know. So what's missing? Right. I'm a bit obsessed about speed. I think safe speeds are the most important element of that safe system diagram, I think, and I'd love to see us having a default safe speed for urban roads. Look, the UK government's already signed up to this under the Stockholm Declaration of 2020. UN declaration, we signed up to it. We're not doing it. Setting local speed limits in England is woefully out of date and completely out of touch with a whole bunch of active travel policy for a start, but also in terms of the safe system as well. The successes in Wales, nearly at the 2-year anniversary of that, has shown that, you reduce speeds. You don't need to reduce them that much. Just a couple of miles per hour can have a really big impact on casualties. We do know through some evidence as well that only around a quarter of urban roads are currently subject to that safe speed limit. So it'd be great if, DFT, click their fingers, and we have a program where that's rolled out. I strongly suspect that that's not going to happen either. That probably wouldn't be very popular. It didn't go down too well in Wales, even though it was really great for road safety. One that I'd love to see, changes to the national speed limit on rural roads. I mean, dropping it to 50, 80 km/h, it's probably still far too high on a lot of roads, but, you know, changing from 60, where, I mean, hardly anybody's doing 60 on the vast majority of our roads anyway. So, you know, bringing it down to 50 is just reflecting what people are doing in reality. But yeah, having some new guidance on setting local speed limits for local authorities would be brilliant. Okay, how does safety link with active travel? We saw something within LTM 120, for example, where it started to link what safe cycling might be. And it started to use data on what infrastructure is in place, what the traffic flow looks like, and what the vehicle speeds are. You know, it would be great if all other standards, you know, all other planning standards, road safety audit standards, all guidance, planning guidance was all aligned perhaps with maybe a goal that nobody's killed or seriously injured on our roads, to make sure that there's no conflict within authorities. And we're starting to create roads that are easy for road users to understand what they're there for. That's what I mean by that road hierarchy within there. I've got a slide on that in a second. Pavement parking ban annoys me immensely when I'm a pedestrian, that I have to walk into the road. You know, the roads where the cars go, isn't it? After all, you know, the motorists are the ones paying road tax, aren't they? You know, give me my pavement back, please. Thank you very much. Something that the government is seriously thinking about, or at least that's what we were hearing about 6 months ago. You know, that has real benefits for active travel and road safety. But when I talked about, you know, this road hierarchy, this is a model that we've worked on. Don't worry if you can't read all the detail. You know, white text on some of the light background really doesn't work. But there's a concept of movement and place that I'm sure everybody on this call is aware of. What we tried to do is look at a movement and place model and think what that meant in terms of vehicle speeds. So, you know, as you go further up there, you've got where you want higher traffic speed and volume. We want high speeds on some roads, motorways mainly, or where there's median separation. Where we've got people, more people, we want lower speeds. So if you look at how that might map out in terms of actual speeds on the roads, this is kind of where we think it works. You know, you can only do 60 or 70 on dual carriageways and motorways. Everything else is going to be lower. And you can see that wherever there's a lot of people, that's where we're really thinking about 20 miles per hour. So yeah, our kind of Tetris diagram that we've created here, we've shown it to a number of road authorities that really like it. Nearly finished on my slides and we're getting ready for the questions. So I've talked about some of the problems, and you may have ideas about, you know, what you'd love to see being done in road safety, and I'm looking forward to those points and questions coming along in a minute. But thinking about those mechanisms, you know, the bits around the outside of my diagram earlier, which ones are the most effective? Well, which ones do we need to have in place to deliver that? I've been working in road safety for a long time. You know, I've worked in local authorities, safety camera partnerships. Almost the first thing that anybody did was to create a campaign and then create a website and then sometimes an app to go alongside it that 3 people would end up visiting or downloading. You know, just projecting a message because we think, you know, we're nice people. We know that drink driving's bad. Why don't we create a website that tells people that drink driving's bad? You know, that seems to be a little bit of a waste of resources. You might not want to think about something a little bit different, maybe compliance and enforcement on that list. One of the things that I would say about infrastructure as a mechanism is that, you know, if you create great infrastructure, if you can stop runoff road crashes, it doesn't just, you know, stop people who are inattentive at the wheel. In theory, this is controversial, could you create a road that would actually be safe to drink drive on? You know, if you've got, you know, all those barriers in place so that, you know, if somebody was drunk driving, they hit a barrier and then didn't die and then didn't kill somebody else, you know, would that be the solution? This is something that a lot of people in the international community are proposing. They're saying, look, if you get the infrastructure right, then you create the conditions that allows people to make mistakes. And I'm not seriously suggesting that we create roads that people can go drink driving on. But what I'm doing is I'm saying you create the forgiving road environment. Is that the key that we need to unlock? The problem is that requires an enormous amount of money to fix all of those roads. So this is how I had in mind about how the discussion might go. These are the kind of things that I'm interested in, but you can take it in any direction you like. I'm interested in what you think the biggest risks are on the roads. What are the biggest risks to people undertaking active travel? You may have other thoughts about other types of collisions as well. What are the quick wins? You know, what would you whisper in the ear of the DFT and said, look, if you just did this, this would make such a difference. Might not be politically acceptable because there's a lot of politics that goes on in all of this as well. And then what are the best methods of achieving that success? Going back to that previous list that I had in here, and, you know, in terms of these mechanisms, which ones do you think are the most important? You know, you've heard me being a little bit scathing about, you know, communicating messages. And I don't think that in itself it's effective. As a part of a wider campaign, I think it's a really good idea. But, you know, just, you know, handing out leaflets in the street, as I did once upon a time, encouraging people to, you know, stay safe, you know, that doesn't seem the most effective solution. So there is the slide at the end that's got my contact details. You can probably find me. It's not too hard. So I'll just go back to that list there. So what are the biggest risks on the road? What are the quick wins? And what are the best methods of achieving success? So I will now stop that sharing and looking forward to what everybody's got to say.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you very much. We've got some questions coming in, and of course, we must start with Bob Davies from the Road Danger Reduction Forum. So, Bob, haven't seen you for ages. Hi.
Hi. Yes.
What's
Hello,
your
everybody.
question
Hello,
or
Richard.
comment?
I haven't seen Richard since debating him at, I think, can't remember which conference. Doesn't matter.
It was an RSGB conference a while ago, I'm sure.
Well,
yeah.
we're not
Now,
here for debate, so keep it succinct.
Okay, so sorry I missed the very first part because I was paddling back from a TfL enforcement meeting, you'll be pleased to know. So I want to make actually 3 points which I think are very relevant. I would like Richard's comments on them. First of all, there is a serious measurement problem. Now, if you go to the RDRF website, I'll put the link up. I was engaged along with Simon Monk in clobbering somebody who said that the Netherlands was worse for cycling because the number of deaths per head of the population on bicycles was a lot higher than here. So I think we've got a central problem here that if you're talking about road safety in terms of reducing casualties, you have a big problem because one of the reasons why casualties went down during various times over the past few decades was because of pedestrians and cyclists moving out of the highway environment. And in fact, it used to be sort of road safety common sense that basically you don't want people riding bicycles or walking about because they're vulnerable and they'll more likely get killed. So first question is about measurement and how that doesn't really seem to be on the agenda at the moment. Second thing, enforcement. Absolutely correct. Politely asking people to do the right thing or showing them videos of people who've suffered doesn't work. I'm glad to say there is quite a bit of enforcement, particularly regarding 20 miles an hour in London. But the problem is there's very little in the way of traffic police. So RDRF has been pushing for £500 million to be spent on roads policing, which is what I think would be required to have a reasonable level of roads policing, along with public reporting, third-party reporting. And to sell that to motorists by saying that is the equivalent of you spending £20 a year extra, you'll get that off your insurance if you have that kind of enforcement. And that sort of thing happened with the Wales 20 mile an hour stuff, where you get a reduction in insurance premiums. Very briefly, the forgiving environment, the safe systems of creating an environment where motorists don't have to worry about driving properly because of the way the road is engineered, or their car is engineered. That's actually been happening for about 70 years. And it's one of the reasons why that approach is very bad news for people walking and cycling if you're anywhere near them. And from seat belts and crumple zones, roll bars, airbags, SUVs, and also the kind of stuff you have on the highway, the crash barriers, the anti-skid, etc. Bad news for cyclists and pedestrians. And finally, I would say GDL is the thing which everybody's been going for. I don't know if you mentioned that, graduated driver licensing. It's supposed to be very good for reducing overall casualties because it's restrictions on young drivers, but I don't think it would be a particularly big benefit for active travel. So basically, a big thing, first of all, measurement. I think we need to have measurement which looks at the number of vehicles, the kind of vehicles that are involved. That has got its way onto DFT measurement after work from us unpacked, nearly finished. So it shows lorries most dangerous, then motorcycles, then cars and vans, then bicycles. Getting the right kind of measurement first, then enforcement. Don't go down the adaptation route, and that's it for the time being.
Thank you, Bob. And I'll just say to everyone, I've allowed this, but all our other questions need to be short ones. But Bob, you've earned your right to
Okay.
ask all of that. Richard, I hope you're ready for it. We set the timer.
I've made some notes. Measurement. I think the DFT stats team, slightly, they sit within the same department. They're very interested in innovative analysis and trying to find out what's really going on. Just looking at numbers of casualties each year, and were they in a car, were they in a truck, what were they hit by? That's it. It's not particularly exciting. We have actually just been engaged in a project by the Road Safety Trust where we are going to be getting detailed information on vehicles involved in collisions and who they hit. And when I say detailed information, I mean everything. We are using the vehicle registration number. We're matching that to commercial data sets to try and find out what safety features were they fitted with. Can we work out what the rate of pedestrian-related collisions is in urban areas where vehicles are fitted with pedestrian AEB as a technology, for example. That's just one example of things like that. There's a lot of these safety features that are out there, and we're not measuring it, we're not understanding it. And more than that, we're going to try and get some better vehicle classifications in, which might enable us to answer some questions about SUVs, which nobody likes. Enforcement, I think we absolutely sell it to motorists. You'd be surprised how popular roads policing is. Members of the public love watching, road police dramas and real life stuff on TV. They're incredibly popular. There's a lot of romance associated, I think, with traffic cops. So yeah, I think we absolutely should be investing in it. The forgiving environment, I'm mainly talking about roads where we don't want to have VRUs present. It's those high-speed roads. When it's in more of an urban environment, it's a different kind of design planning discussion that needs to be had. And there's people on this call who are much bigger experts than me on that. Finally, on the GDL thing, because you mentioned it, I don't think would have a big impact on active travel. The casualty savings are, reasonable, but I don't think they're enough to make the DFT particularly interested in losing all those votes, because 16-year-olds are going to be voting next.
Thank you.
Okay. Wow, we flew through that, Richard. Okay, deep breath, everyone. On to the rest of our questions. Richard, I'll just start asking them. We'll start off nice and light after that one. Richard, which OS map area do you have behind you on the wall?
Do you know what? I knew somebody was going to ask this question, but
our crowd.
Because I think I know the crowd. Yeah, so it's a question I wish I get asked more. So that's Scarfell, but next to it we have Snowdon. I can't remember what it's called in Welsh now. And then the next one is Ben Nevis, of course. And it's all there because you don't want to see my turbo trainer in the background.
Very good. I think that's a very good way of creating a screen. We'll take notes, everyone. Okay, we'll get more serious about road safety now. David in Birmingham asks, is the new road safety strategy for England or the UK?
Well, Now, that's a really good question. I think this is the problem with the DFT. I mean, it's kind of England. Scotland have got their own road safety strategies. Wales are going to be bringing out theirs too. There are devolved powers that exist. So I don't think the rest of the nations are going to be particularly interested in DFT necessarily. And let's face it, English politicians telling them what to do. I would hope that the DFT do use their powers on certain things. You know, that vehicle safety stuff. There's certain things that the UK government can only do. So they should definitely focus on those. But I think what they really need to do is make sure that they give much better guidance and maybe some funding to local authorities and police forces.
Thanks, Richard. Mark asks, what's your view on RSGB safe walking routes to school approach?
I'm not familiar with the approach in too much detail, but in terms of safe walking and travel to and around schools, you know, school streets, absolutely fantastic. Really embrace that idea. And not just because there's a primary school at the end of my road. And it's not just the quality of the parking that's really bad, it's the safe nature of it. And I'm thinking, you could park 200 meters away and then walk in and out. Yes, it might rain sometimes. So I really think parents setting the example of walking to school. I mean, maybe I was lucky because of the environment that I was living in when I had kids, but, you know, I walked them to school every day until they ended up getting on a school bus. You know, I think that's really important. It's the time you get to spend with your kids for a start, which is, you know, very precious. In terms of the walking routes to school approach, no, I don't know the mechanisms of it in enough detail to be able to say whether there is a better approach available, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Anonymous participant would like to know, why is there no way of reporting a highways engineer for professional breach or negligence? As a healthcare professional who can be referred to governing bodies for breach of this, I don't understand why there isn't parity for this in the road safety world. And let's say perhaps not the highways engineer, but someone in highways or the local authority. Should anyone be held responsible for poor design?
So I think you're probably looking at something like corporate manslaughter, really. I don't think we particularly want individual highway engineers to be behind bars, unless there's some you can think of. I think having that corporate responsibility is absolutely key. Coroners have for years given notices to highway authorities. Is it actually making a difference? I think making sure the highway authority has a higher degree of legal responsibility and making it clear perhaps what is and isn't acceptable, because, you know, I've talked about people making mistakes. People could make mistakes. People could make bad decisions. But, you know, if you're embracing Vision Zero and you're saying that we don't want anybody to be killed, and you're inventing the safe system, and, you know, and you say you're going to follow that, then surely every single decision you make as a professional, as an organization, should be focused on, will this kill more people? I mean, that's the bare minimum. You would really hope that people would go, oh, this might kill a few more people. I'm not going to talk about smart motorways, but, you know, that you would hope that people were going, how is the thing I'm going to implement ensure that nobody dies on this road? And if you can't answer yes to that, possibly you need to go back to the drawing board. And should that be evidenced as well in any planning decisions?
Yes. No, but we must make sure that we increase the efficiency and get more cars through. Right. Question from Tim in Suffolk. I am preparing a 20-mile-per-hour limit for my district council. What is the Stockholm Declaration from 2020, and where do I find details?
Oh, well, Google, other search engines are available, I'm afraid, are your friends. I will try and find the link to it and put it in the chat. But it came about because of the third global ministerial conference on road safety. So this was in Stockholm. It was like just days before COVID kicked off. The last one was in Morocco in February. It was. But the Stockholm Declaration it's one of these events. It's like one of the COP events. Everybody gets together at the end and they sign up a piece of paper and say what they think is important. Because it was a UN forum, that means that all members of the United Nations signed up to this. So we have already signed up to this. I'm sure you all know Rod King. Rod King mentions this every 5 minutes. It's like, we have signed up to this thing. We're supposed to be doing it. So it's just crazy that we're not actually following it through with words. Well, look, Wales are. So round of applause to them.
Okay. Catherine from Dundee has shared a question that came up at the conference in Scotland. How do we get people to be more outraged about road death and injuries? 6 times more people die on the roads versus knife crime, yet it's not treated as a scandal.
Okay, this is the conversation I've had for 20 years, because we're professionals. Like, if only people knew. Why don't people realize? You talk about number of jumbo jets crashes, and we all agree at this conference, and we say this absolutely, something needs to be done about it. I think it's because of the drip approach. It's just, oh, this, oh, that, oh, the other. Now, I would say that you do tend to see a lot more in the news than you did. And I think it's because, thankfully, there's half as many road deaths now as when I started working in road safety. But there does need to be more indignation. And I think actually the media are helping a little bit on this. The media has had enough of experts. I used to get invited on all sorts of shows, left, right, and centre, because they wanted to hear about the expert. We need to hear that human story. So we need the people, the victims, and the families of the victims to really push for something. You look at great work that people like Break are doing, really putting victims at the heart of it. That's the key. There is a slightly flippant comment that I have made at other times, and I think I'm still safe to say this one. It almost needs a major celebrity to die, or a child of a celebrity, and for that celebrity to campaign. You think about how these things get going in the media. That's the thing that needs to drive the interest in road safety, because that tends to be how media and society gets a grip on these things. But it is daft that we can't be using the evidence.
Okay. Matthew in Darlington, or is that his name? I'm so sorry, Matthew. I'm not sure if it's your name or where you are. He is currently setting up a task and finish group at his unitary authority to view road dangers through a systemic safety lens, and would like to know, do you have a presentation or slide deck that is aimed specifically at local authorities, the highway authority?
I will find out. If you can send me an email, richard.owen@agilisys.co.uk. I'll have a look at what we've got. We have delivered a lot of road safety strategies for local authorities. Which is the best one? If you have a look at the Greater Manchester Road Safety Strategy that was launched earlier this year, end of last year, that's a really good one, and it starts to bring in a lot more on active travel as well. So that's got some really good cues, I think, in terms of what a great road safety strategy is. Now, TFGM obviously got quite a bit of cash up there, but there are other ones that we've delivered for smaller road authorities as well. I can't think of a particular highlight in there. One thing that we do say is that you need to involve victims groups within the safe system as well. You need to make sure that you're consulting with people and bringing them in and listening to their voices on what they think makes a difference towards road safety. And that's something that, working in previous partnerships, you get the local authority, the police, the fire and rescue service, you get the courts involved, and then it's like, what about the people out there that maybe have thoughts and opinions too? So that's something that I think is really important for any road safety partnership to be considering.
Great. Mark in Brighton, do you think community speed watch is helpful?
Okay. Yeah. Look, it's got its place. I think real enforcement is best. Things that end up with people getting points on their license. speed awareness courses, maybe there's a bit of a get out of jail free card or get off your points free card. You know, nearly 2 million people a year are going on speed awareness courses. The numbers are going up. Does that mean it's working? I'll let you decide. So community speed, I think it's really good to get volunteers involved at a local community. Helps them understand what speeding hotspots look like. And if they can then identify those through that work, the police have got to be out there enforcing it, or the local authority need to be thinking about what other measures they can put in place. So it's at the softer end of speed management, and it's all part of a framework, isn't it? Is it helpful? Is it? I don't think it's going to result in casualty reduction, but as an education and awareness thing, you know, it's got its part to play.
Okay, and I think further up to that is Tim's question, what role do you see for citizen engagement in enforcement of road traffic law? So beyond Community Speed Watch, things like Operation Snap, how's that working?
Oh, I love Operation Snap. As soon as I heard Operation Snap, I went out and bought a dash cam. I wasn't particularly interested in having them before, but, you know, I saw the work that Go Safe Wales did on it and was just blown away by it. I think I was talking about Operation Snap on a call earlier. This is a research project where we're trying to look at the benefits of active travel infrastructure, actually. And we're looking at evidence and data sources that we can use to try and figure out what's going on. And Operation Snap was mentioned. You know, could we get that data, that information? You know, when an Op Snap request or something is fed into the police, can that be noted so that public can see that, yes, the time and effort that I spent recording this, reporting this, is now available publicly. So I'd love to see Operation Snap out there, not necessarily the videos and the footage, etc., but just show that X was reported here on this date, category of behavior that was noted. But yeah, I think I'm a big fan of Operation Snap. There's a lot of people that don't like it because of the whole CCTV thing, the concern about, you know, evangelist motorists or cyclists or even pedestrians out there that could get themselves into trouble, because there's a lot of the people that exhibit the poor behaviors might give you a whack as well. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. But no, I think absolutely more funding for it should be rolled out. Let's find a way of streamlining it so it's so much easier for members of the public to do it, instead of having to go on the website and then try and find out the way to do it and fill in 30 different forms.
Yeah, it's still not that easy, is it? Further on cameras, with AI and new camera tech, why can't we have average speed cameras everywhere and not just on the motorway and roadworks?
Well, if anybody has looked at my CV, they will see that I did carry out a review of average speed cameras for the RAC Foundation a while ago now. So I'm a big fan of them. I used to be a big fan of spot speed cameras and mobile speed cameras, and I think they're towards the lower end. Average speed cameras have just an amazing impact on compliance. They reduce people's speeds. They don't just reduce the median speeds, they reduce the top end speeds as well. They narrow the speed band profile so that everybody's traveling much more smoothly. The impacts on journey time reliability are great. And by journey time reliability, I mean, you know, the variance that you would get going along an individual route. It's just a smoother, nicer, easier way to travel around. And also they don't ping you if you've just gone over the limit for a second or two. So I think the motorists generally are more supportive of them. The costs have come down a little bit. I would love to see them in more places, but I raise you intelligent speed adaptation, which is the future. I'd love to see roads free of speed cameras. I don't want to see a single speed camera out there, because I want the vehicles to be sticking to the limit automatically. Now that is the big future. That's even more unpopular than speed cameras. Speed cameras are not going to disappear, possibly even while I'm still working in road safety. But, you know, I think, yeah, having them out and about more often. What's great is, some of you may have noticed that national highways seem to be quite fond of these on single carriageway roads now. They've been adopting a bit of a program on this lately. There's one on the A5 near me, south of Milton Keynes. Reduce the speed limit to 50, put in average speed cameras, reduce congestion, reduce collisions. Absolutely fantastic.
There we go. Right, Beth would like to know, should all CHIT members be working within safe systems framework principles?
Well, that's straightforward. As a CIHT member myself, I think that's absolutely true. If you're it's a no-brainer, I think. I mean, there's some debates about the value of the safe system and some of the elements within it, but I think, you know, that thing that I was saying earlier about you almost don't do no harm, treat yourself like you're a healthcare professional. So when you're delivering a scheme or thinking about a strategy, implementing a new policy, you know, make sure that you're thinking of all of the elements of the safe system, which ones are going to bring the biggest benefit, who it is that you need to work with. And it goes beyond the people who think they work in safety. It's the other people that are doing procurement. You know, if you build in procurement for buses, or you're buying fleet vehicles, why don't you make sure that they're fitted with these technologies? Make sure your buses have got ISO on them. Make sure that you're buying NCAP 5-star rated vehicles. There's lots of different ways that road authorities and police forces, of course, other public sector organisations, can kind of build road safety and safe system into everything that they do.
Thank you. I see quite a number of comments from H in the questions. I won't be asking all of them, but a lot of them relating to safety systems or design for vehicles, borrowing from other vehicles to put onto trucks and so on, as well as the health of drivers of lorries in particular. So I think these are all helpful.
On the truck thing, I just mentioned this. What's really interesting is that government's implemented safety standard for trucks that are way beyond what they're willing to implement for other vehicles. Anything above 3.5 tons now, I think, has got to have a speed limiter fitted. The amount of safety tech that they've got in those is fantastic. And that's because we see the risk. We see the risk of the big, heavy vehicle. But if you've got an SUV that's weighing 2 tons, why doesn't that have the vehicle safety technology fitted to it as well? It's not like, you know, you're going to get off lightly if you get hit by one of those. So, you know, this is where a lot of us think, you know, it's obvious what the risk is. It's clear the benefits the technology have. Let's bring it to the entire fleet, because it's going to take 10 or 12 years for this to start permeating through. So we need to act now.
Yeah, though I say some recent driving that I've done. I was astonished at how many lorry drivers I saw watching content on their phones while driving. Absolutely astonished. How can you drive while watching a show?
Yeah, National Highways, to their credit, have backed a lot of funding for enforcement of that kind of stuff. So they have dummy lorries that drive around, just the cabs, and then film them, and then they just lose their job. Just crazy.
Yeah, it just seems like a crazy risk to me. Excellent. Okay. Well, and on the nature of that, as well as better enforcement, is there any hope of seeing longer driving bans and more serious consequences for failing to meet the responsibility of driving a vehicle on our public roads? Many examples of incidents and many examples of getting back into a car not that long after.
Yeah, other countries have shorter bans. You know, you might have a fortnight ban or a month-long ban. You know, if you get done for using your mobile phone, you know, that's 6 points on your license. You can do that again before you get 12, and then you might still get let off anyway if you end up going to court. Is there a short, sharp shock or something along those lines? You know, could you have some temporary bans? You know, because, you know, if I couldn't drive for a fortnight, I mean, I can cycle into work. It's a bit of a way, and I'd probably get a lot fitter for it. Maybe I should do it more often, but it would be bloody inconvenient. And yeah, it might make people change their mind a little bit more. In terms of longer bans, I think, you know, that has come in a lot more. You know, you do see people who get longer bans. What you do tend to see as well, though, is that those longer bans tend to come in with long prison sentences. So you get people who have a really long prison sentence, when they've managed to serve their driving ban at the same time, you know, to make sure that it's consecutive.
Yeah, yep. Though I will say that we don't like to hold cycling up as the punishment for losing your license. That's yeah, it should be a positive thing, not a punishment. Right, I'm going to close questions now, everybody, and I will wrap up with one final one. So Tim in Leicester asked, would a citizens jury examining road safety as part of a move to sorry, Tim, I'm not exactly sure what the question is, so I'm going to turn this into a question. How can we get citizens more involved in making those or influencing those policy and legislative pieces of road safety? And actually, if I could make a comment on an earlier point we had around the knife crime versus road danger, I wonder if the reason we don't, as a public, get angrier and more involved in shaping this is because, well, I could never imagine myself, and I hope no one else here could imagine themselves participating in knife crime, but maybe all of us could think, oh, maybe one day I might have just gone a bit over the speed limit and I wouldn't want to go to jail. So how do we start to change our own mindset so the public is doing more to make these safe changes?
I think no motorist or even the very occasional cyclist that ends up being involved in a fatal collision where they kill or injure somebody else thinks that they're going to do it. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody intends to do it, and it just happens. And because you're not in the mindset of, oh, I think I might go and do this thing, you're probably not thinking that it would ever even happen. So having stories about normal people who were doing something that they thought was pretty normal and ended up destroying somebody else's life and ruining their own lives as well. It's building up this catalogue of stories, I think, is really important. But you're always going to have that barrier that, when we, and I'm a motorist, when we're out driving, we're just not thinking about this. We're not thinking that we're in a killing machine. And how on earth do we flip that thing around? I think this is a kind of generational change. Having more people out there walking and cycling and seeing it from the other perspective would be a bloody good start.
Yeah. Well, as someone who cycles and then now gets behind the wheel of a car every now and then, I can tell you I feel terrified. I'm sure we all do, because we know what that other side is like, don't we? And we're all here in this community learning more and more about road safety. So Richard, thank you so much for coming and sharing that. I'm seeing some applause and some thanks and some thumbs up, so I think it went down very, very well. And let's hope we can see some of your recommendations become reality.
Fingers crossed. Maybe I'll come back in the future and do an update on what the government are doing, but I'm not holding my breath too much.
We won't hold our breath either, but I do hope that you can come and join us with those updates. Now, if everyone doesn't mind holding on for just a minute, I will tell you what we have coming up next week. Next week, we have got Sarah Mitchell, CEO of Cycling UK, and she will be updating us on Cycling UK's recent and planned activities, including campaigns, the Cycle Advocacy Network, their rebrand, and the 10th anniversary of the Big Bike Revival. I must declare my conflict of interest. I'm a trustee of Cycling UK, and I think you'll all want to come and listen to that one too. But thank you so much, Richard, and thanks everyone for joining us today. See you next week. Bye.